Welcome to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. As usual, I'm your host, Lauren O'Brien. We're going to do a little switcheroo today, and I'm going to be actually hosting and not the co-host of this shit. I want to thank Mr. Sean Hill here at Fourth Corner for being with us tonight.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. For getting everything recorded, and it's a lovely night. I really like the nice fireplace that you got cranking in here.
It's working out well. You know, the picture on the TV screen shows the warmth
you can
that
really
we need.
Feel it from the screen.
And
also joining us tonight is Mr. Joe Dacey.
Howdy.
Welcome back, buddy.
Oh, good to see you, man.
What do we have the nickname for you? Our interim storyteller or whatever it was?
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Welcome back,
I
buddy.
like it.
And we've got it. I think you were on our second episode, actually. We've got Miss Casey here with us.
Hey, how's it going?
Woo! And tonight we are talking about cybernetics and human augmentation.
Oof.
Now, I'm really into this stuff, guys, and it's just because technology is so fascinating. There's so many things we could do to our bodies and so many developments that are going on. So what do you guys first and foremost think about human augmentation before we get into it?
Terrifies me. To the core, I really think it's... I don't think it's a just general thought. I don't think it's a way for us to continue humanity. I think it's to stop in the process of it. I think we're stopping in the middle to preserve this weird middle version of humanity, instead of trying to keep these bodies alive for hundreds of years. It terrifies me to extend that process.
Well, and the interesting thing about what I think you're talking about is when we start mitigating human behavior and our shortcomings with technology, we actually start kind of not poisoning, but we start diminishing the physical gene pool, and we allow these genetic things to keep going, which is another episode about biohacking that I'm actually studying right now. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in another episode, because that's really
keep these fears going in my head.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna try to keep that flame lit under your ass, Joe. So, Ms. Casey, what do you think about cybernetics and human augmentation?
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely terrifying to me as well. I think there should be a disconnect between technology and us as human beings, and combining the two is unnatural, to say the least. And I think that technology and its advancements are wonderful and definitely have helped humanity in a lot of ways, and as far as medically and as far as our individual developments, yeah, it's great. But I think it's important for us to be able to disconnect and to have a permanent fusion between those two. I guess, between those two.
Yeah, and a healthy balance between the two.
Yeah. And to not be able to disconnect, to turn off the Wi-Fi, to turn off the data, to
the ability to divorce from technology versus divorce from nature, which is where I think
I
a lot of
people's
I think a lot of people's worries about getting cybernetics and all these kinds of augmentations is that we're getting so divorced and so far away from nature that now it seems like we're getting married to technology. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, what you want to make sure is we've got this sweet balance in the middle where we're not divorced from either side of them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of technology these days, like social media or anything of this nature, is meant to connect us. It was built with the intention of creating this greater connection between us, which it has in many ways. It's wonderful that we can communicate with people all over the planet, but it is, in a broad sense, has disconnected us from our overall collective consciousness that we innately have without the technological features in place.
I'm going to bring that back up, that disconnect, because there's a really interesting story that I am so excited about this episode, guys. So I'm going to move on to you, Sean. What do you think about human augmentation and the ability to connect yourself to a computer?
it's breaching new technology. You know, it's breaching new things that I feel like. It's one of those generations where I feel like if there's a volunteer generation that's willing to check it out, let's check it out. Let's see who wants to go for it and stuff. As far as it being the new 5G or 4G, if you ain't got it, you're left behind shit. I don't know how I feel about that. Where it's like, I like it as an option idea.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I like it as if you don't stay up with the trend, you're going to be left behind because technology is overspeeding.
Yeah.
It's like
you
getting
need
a gold tooth. Like, I want the option to get a gold tooth so I can look fly, but if I also choose not to, I don't want anybody in society to be like, "Oh, you're a fucking weirdo."
Well, or what I look at is like a lot of places rely on you to be able to research something within a certain amount of time now based on the fact that you can access a computer and use YouTube and the internet versus your local library. Because if we based everything on you having to research, the time research needed to go to your library and look at books and open things and write down on paper and stuff, time allowances would be longer than they are now. But now they've been shortened because like now your essay for college needs to be done in 3 days, not 3 weeks, because
you can whip out your phone and research
because
it right there on the bus.
you need to use a computer somewhere. And if you ain't got it, and that's, I mean, the libraries are trying to associate with that a little bit and having computers with internet. But, you know, it kind of comes down to I like it as an option, not as a requirement, I guess.
Definitely. So I'm going to tell you guys really quickly about 2 things. One, the first thing, we are not talking about plugging your brain into a computer. That is the exact opposite thing that we are talking about tonight. Because tonight we're not talking necessarily about cybernetics. I will touch on that a little bit, but it's kind of a tough subject, so we'll get on to that. But tonight we are not talking about plugging your brain into a computer. Now, the second thing that I want to say is what we are talking about tonight is enhancing human, the human ability. Okay? And so that's where I see
Batman.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Kind of Batman, yeah, because he's got like the grappling hooks that allow him to basically
he's not a
fly
superhero, but
through
he's got the stuff to make him kind of more enhanced.
That's exactly what we're talking about
Fighting
tonight.
for the greater good.
Yeah, and so I've prepared a little article, so in case you guys, the listeners, don't know, we're also changing the format a little bit. I'm going to be researching things a little bit more thoroughly and bringing actual discussions. So having said that,
professional up in this bitch.
oh yeah, we're getting real professional. Trying to attack it from a different direction and you know, just hone in my skill a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's like what, episode 17, 18 or something like that.
He's gonna get hi-fi on the format, and I'm gonna get lo-fi on the production.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's gonna be really high quality, really shitty production. Anyway, so in regards to human augmentation, I have written something. Technology is the extension of human ability, and if we look at anything like the plow, the wheel, a cell phone, a smartphone, we see that these actually multiply human actions exponentially. And as human beings, we've tried to find ways to make things easier for us, to help us harvest more, grow more, to move our legs when they don't work, to see in the dark. We're utilizing tools to enhance our abilities already in all sorts of fucking manners. And this is where human augmentation enters. According to ScienceDirect.com, human augmentation can be broken down into 3 different types, which we'll talk about all 3. Augmented senses, augmented action, and augmented cognition. Now, we're going to address augmented cognition first because, as we've already talked about, we are not talking about cybernetics tonight. And the one thing about cognitive enhancement, cognitive augmentation, is that there's actually no company in the world, there's nothing that I could find doing my research, there's nobody that has anything that directly connects to your brain other than like a hearing aid that bypasses your eardrum to send electrical signals. So as far as I'm aware of, there's no cybernetic connections going on. And
that
so,
are public knowledge.
Not in public knowledge, yeah. So augmented cognition is, in the most basic sense, the merging between human cognition and AI technology. Simply explained, we are always on the hunt for information. When we desire to learn something, it's irresistible, and we go on the internet. We Google something, and we look for results until we found the solution to our problem or an answer to a question. Essentially, augmented cognition, rather, would work similarly without the middleman of a phone. As far as I've seen, and I may be wrong, there's no functional implants that allow for any kind of interaction with the internet so far. And so, in regards to augmented cognition, there's not a whole lot of products out there that can merge your brain with the internet. So there's fascinating developments that are occurring, but there's not really a whole lot to talk about. So, having said that, I want to talk about augmented senses, which is fucking cool. Holy shit, guys. I am just strap on your fucking learning caps because this is the fucking time.
Okay.
All right. So, augmented senses may sound fairly straightforward, but for the people who may not understand, we're going to go ahead and explain it. Basically, augmented senses is the utilization of tools or objects to help sense the outside world. A good example would be infrared and night vision, hearing aids. There's even a colorblind artist who sees color using a neural implant. Now, I don't mean sees color. He fucking hears color. National Geographic did a story about a man named Neil Herbison in 2017. Neil Herbison is a Spanish-born British-Irish man born without the ability to see color called achromatopsia, who became the very first official cyborg.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Fucking cool, guys. We're fucking headlong into this whole thing.
That's who John Connors is going to come back and kill.
We're going to get to that because there's actually a really interesting thing that's occurring right now that's a little creepy as well.
What, if I may interject real quick, what makes an official cyborg?
Yeah, I was curious about that
So,
as well.
okay, we'll define this real quick. So, a cyborg is actually a merging of two words. Cy, meaning cybernetics, cyber, anything electronic, and then org, meaning organic. So a cyborg is any merging between any kind of like system and an organic person. So this is where things get really cool.
What about a pacemaker?
You could technically
or
deem that
spinal cord stimulators.
Well, you could technically deem those as like cyborg-ish, but they're not. I wouldn't declare them that because they're medical necessities. They're not something that you do to augment or to necessarily enhance
these
something.
are more okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so this is about enhancement, not maintaining the status quo.
Not maintenance. I
exactly.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So Harbison, the guy who can literally hear color, explains attached to his occipital bone, the bone at the back of your skull, is a quote sensory system unquote that creates an audible vibration within his head that allows him to quote hear color. He has extended his senses to seeing almost infrared and ultraviolet. In later models of his antenna, he's actually connected it to the internet and allowed a few of his close friends to send him colors, images, videos, or sounds directly to his head, where he interprets them as vibrations.
Oh.
So this is a very interesting idea, creating an extrasensory organ, an organ that was previously not there to interpret the world, let's say infrared. It's fascinating, but what's more is there's actually different things you can do. In an interview with techly.com/au, Harbison talks about a solar crown. Quote, well, I've designed a new sensory organ, which is a sensory organ for the sense of time. We all have a sense of time, but we don't have an organ for the sense of time. So I've created this organ that will be implanted inside my head. It's circular, like an inner crown, so it goes all the way around his head. It's an inner crown, and it gives me a point of heat that takes 24 hours to go around the head. It's like having a solar clock inside my body, so I will know what time it is by feeling the point of heat around my head. If this is going to give me a perfect sense of time, I will know where the sun is rising, because if I feel the heat on my left ear, that's a place on the planet. Or if I feel it in my right ear, it's somewhere else. So it will give me a sense of, well, basically, of time, end quote. Now, this is fucking cool. So first of all, dude can see, or he can hear colors. And he does this by this weird antenna that, as I explained, attaches to the back of his head, but it extends to the front of his head. And what he does is he essentially points it at different colors, at people's faces and stuff. And in the back of his skull, it vibrates at certain radio frequencies over the course of one whole octave. Or not radio frequencies, but of notes in one octave. And so he's able to actually fucking hear color.
Is this antenna outside of his body or placed under?
It's outside of his body, yeah.
Okay.
He actually had to get he designed it himself and had to get an anonymous doctor to implant it into his skull. Yeah.
But I feel like there would be so many room for error there, where like someone finds out some weird color that gives him some horrible sound, or like like flashing different colors vibrates the back of his head too much, and like
Yeah.
I'm surprised like 50 Shades of Grey or whatever hasn't gotten a hold of him and been like, yo, check this. We're going to do some experiments with the shades of color and how it affects your mood, and then we're going to make a story out of it, like a movie, a Hollywood flick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's freaking it's such a weird story because like
opening up a whole other can of worms.
yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it later, but it's really interesting because and you can find interviews on YouTube and stuff like that. But it took him 3 years in order to feel the variations between different colors, and it took him a long time to discern between like orange yellow and actual yellow, or orange yellow and orange. It took him a long time, and he says between each note in the 8 notes in an octave, that there are 30 different variations of colors between those, and it took him a very long time in order to sense those. But the cool thing,
I feel like I just wouldn't be a painter. I just would just not deal with color. Like,
well, that's where things get really interesting. He actually is an artist.
yeah,
and he
yeah, that's what
creates
I would just be like. Yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna try art. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, and so there's certain art that you can find online where he, oh my god, he's essentially got these like squares. Like think about a picture frame, but if it was fractalized all the way to the inside, right? Now, what he does is he creates these paintings or digital images, and what he does is if you scan it with his, I forget the name of it, but it's his antenna, and it changes color to sound. And if you scan these, they'll actually play things from like Justin Bieber's Believe to like some Mozart song.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so he's actually getting really into the art that is a sensory art that isn't something that you can see or hear, but something you have to experience via this extra sensor organ.
So, did he know himself to be an artist prior to him being the first official cyborg?
You know, I'll talk a little bit more about that because that's an interesting story, but I know that he always had a contrast and a desire to do something that was artistic. And so I don't know that before he was I know that in order to create his his antenna, he had to actually design that himself. So he went to school for engineering, from what I understand. I could be, get that a little bit wrong, but he went to school and essentially designed this mechanism for himself, so that he could, he could perceive color. And so I don't know if he was an artist beforehand. I would assume so, because it seems like a pretty artistic thing to do, to design an entirely new organ to sense
Yes.
the world in. So
Yeah.
I would imagine that he was an artist, but I can't
Gotcha.
I can't say that's a fact that I know. But all right, so the whole antenna thing is fucking crazy. It's really cool, and I honestly don't really know how to put into words how excited I feel about having a sensation that isn't something that we normally perceive. You have a sense of balance, but imagine having a sense of like the feeling of color. So that's really
But
cool.
wouldn't you just hear frequencies?
Yeah, that's exactly.
But
what
so
what
it wouldn't be
hears.
like a new sensation because we hear and feel frequencies all the time.
Well, for him, it's
but-
a new sensation because he
He's-
only sees in grayscale.
But he still hears fine.
Yeah.
So he still hears all these frequencies and he hears music, he hears all that stuff. So it's not a new organ, it's just using an old organ for a new purpose.
Yeah.
That's exactly actually what they describe in his YouTube video, is that they did an MRI, and when they did the MRI, they noticed that his auditory and his sight parts of his brain were always active. That there was no separation between the two, because of what you're describing, is that there's constantly that interaction between the two.
It's like redirecting a sensory
Yeah.
to be used. It's almost like when what do I want to say? A blind man.
If a person goes
a
blind.
blind man can hear way better
Yeah.
than a person that has, imagery and stuff. They can see and stuff
Daredevil.
like that because the sensories take over. So then you can almost it's that old classic when a blind man, you're trying to wave in front of his face,
Yeah.
and he looks at you and he's like, "Why are you waving in front of my face?" And you're like,
how did you know that?
How the fuck do you know that? And
You're a
stuff, and it's
samurai,
like, well, your sensories, and there's a bunch of tests and different ways I've seen with that same theory is like when you start depleting one sensory, other sensories take over and make up for that to, accomplish the same. Obviously, you need to see somehow, navigate and shit like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And so a good example is another thing that I saw on, I can't remember where I saw it actually, so you'll have to forgive me. I'll cite it in the YouTube comments. But I saw these guys that were developing a vest, and what it does is it had kinetic vibrators all across this vest. And so what they did was they attached it to a deaf man, because again they're trying to figure out if we can experience new senses via old senses. And so what they did was they had this guy, this deaf man, write down 4 different words on a whiteboard, and I'm gonna forget a couple of them, but one of them was like play, one of them was eat, one of them was sleep, and then I can't remember the other. Oh, work was the other one. And so what he did was, the guy who was running this experiment, he was trying to teach him verbal. The guy who could hear and speak and was just fine running the experiment was trying to teach this deaf guy how he could
verbally,
feel,
like vibrations would feel.
Yeah, and so all these little vibrating things on this vest activate through vocal tones, and they change based upon whatever notes and whatever the frequencies are being delivered. And so after writing play, which I believe was the first word, the deaf guy wrote it on the whiteboard. The guy running the experiment said to him, play. And as he said play, you could see the vest light up, and it triggered some of these vibrations. And they were different vibrations than the word work. They were different than the word eat. They were different than the word sleep. And so after about 4 minutes in this video, you can watch it as it progresses. Eventually, he gets to the point where the guy running the experiment says play, and the guy looks at sleep and goes to point at it, and then goes up to play. And he's like, work. And he goes to work. And it's a gradual process where eventually he learns that if these certain things vibrate around his body, that means this auditory word, work. This auditory word, sleep. Check it out online. Again, I'll post it on
Seems more
the
like
YouTube.
Pavlovian, like
It is, but it goes to so they're
Almost like a braille in a weird different way.
Exactly.
Where
Yeah.
like if you put your hand over it and you feel this combination of bumps, that means a word or a letter or a phrase and stuff. Where
So
if you
does
get a
it-
shock
does
in a
it go-
combination of ways, or like
So-
SOS, like Morse code, if you get a shock on your body, or like a sensation or something like that, in a combination of recognizable, tradable ways you can memorize, you can start combining those things into a language.
exactly, yeah.
So I'm wondering if these frequencies or vibrational patterns unnaturally or with influence through AI or other technologies, if they're able to be in place without assistance from these technologies. It's almost like
Well, what we're directly talking about tonight is being assisted by technology.
yeah, but I just personally wonder if we would be able to hone in on these vibrations without assistance if given the proper guidance. Naturally, if we like
I've seen
similar
deaf people hold throat, like feel vibrations of people when they talk to like understand more, and like I think we do,
Yeah.
but like on a real subtle
on a subtle
like,
scale, like how we're all able to, so to speak, we're all able to communicate telepathically. Now maybe there's technology that allows us to do that,
Yeah.
or maybe even if it's not open to the public, that technology is available. But I just personally wonder if, anyway, without these assisted technologies, if you were able to do that yourself.
I think what Joe was saying was kind of right. We already do that. We already do have this ability to pick up on things like this. But I think with these assisted technologies, is what they do is they allow us to, translate something into, as Sean was saying, Braille. Where it's like, if we're going to actually experience this thing in the experience that we need to, we have to have this medium in which to translate. We have to have
Okay.
Braille in order to translate it, the letters.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think
rather than it be just a guessing game.
Exactly, yeah. And we also have to have structure to it if we're going to all agree that this is, this is the word work, and if we feel it in our little vest things,
do you
we
think
have
he
to
like
agree to that.
created a language with it first, or just started shocking with a cattle prog and like different frequencies and like being like, that one's work, all right, remember that one. All right.
Well, what I kind of think about is like, for an easy example, when I was at a festival listening to some heavy EDM music and stuff for a few days, the sound system they had there, and I remember talking to my brother about this. I was like, the sound system was so large that I could feel the vibrations in my body.
Yeah, and so in
And
that sense, you
what
don't
I
have to listen to music because you're
Yes.
feeling it.
So exactly. So what I was wondering is, I was looking in this crowd of 20,000, 30,000 people, like, in between there, and wondering how many people actually have auditory problems. Because sign language, this and that. This music had no. There was a little bit of lyrical content, but not much.
It was mostly lights and sounds.
A lot of it's lights and sounds and
I
stuff.
can totally see that.
So you can visually see all these lights, and you can feel all this in your body and stuff. And so it made me like close my eyes for a second and just take in. And I'm like, would your experience if you were deaf?
You could
how would
easily
your
convince me that everybody that loves EDM was deaf.
exactly. It's
I could easily go down that
And
road.
after a while, especially, you almost recognize as a person that's been, if you're immersed in that and stuff, you recognize those tones in your body almost.
Yeah.
Especially if you can relate it to something. So
Yeah, so you're
I was
describing-
almost kind of like really sitting there like happy for a moment that like I bet you there is a bunch of people that have hearing deficiencies that love EDM music because the bass is so thick and all this other stuff that they can feel
Would
the
be
music.
awesome.
Yeah.
Or
And
maybe
and they
Well,
don't
you
get
don't
to
have that
miss
awful
out.
ringing in your ears after the concert.
Yeah. For sure.
maybe that's why there's been such a big influence with the EDM music right now, is just because it's relatable to. It's not just appealing to one genre of music. It's literally tapping into something that's deeper. So it doesn't matter what
and
what your
Stepping
taste
into
of.
your
It's more
literal
tribal.
soul
So,
vibrations.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't matter what kind of music you're into. I'm sure at any
That's
EDM festival, you get people that are into all different genres of music, but it all is rooting to this like deeper
and that's what I-
consciousness.
All right.
That's- yeah.
So before
Sorry.
before we continue, I do want to talk about this goddamn solar clock that this guy's talked about. So
Yeah,
in
that's a
case
weird one.
Yeah.
Like-
So in case you guys are I'm gonna.
In case
I'm
you
gonna
didn't know.
There you go. In case you didn't know, hashtag plug. So what this is it's essentially like imagine wearing a crown upon your head or like a sweatband or something, but you feel warmth on, we'll say, the front part of it. Well, right at your like third eye, pineal gland, you feel warmth right at, we'll say at noon, right? And so when you feel warmth as it moves around your head and it comes over to your right ear, we'll say that sun. Oh no, let's do it backwards. We'll say the front of your head, if you're looking north, is noon. But as it rotates to the left towards your left ear, that's when the sun sets, right? And then as it goes around the back of your head, you know that's close to midnight. Once it's at the very, at 6 o'clock. And then once it gets up to 3 o'clock, you know that the sun is rising, and then up to your forehead. Now, I thought that's really cool.
Physically is?
I thought that's what it physically is. It's implanted into your head.
Like a band that just heats up going around,
Yeah.
or
Just to, and it's only so because we don't have a sense of time. And he kind of explains that in the quotes that I told you guys about. We don't have a sense of time. We just can see daylight and nighttime. And so what this is talking about, the extrasensory parts of this conversation we're talking about, is being able to physically fucking sense time. Because yes, your skin is sensing heat, and that's a sensation that we already have. But it's not about utilizing the senses that we already have. It's about utilizing them in creative and intelligent ways that help indicate us things to us. So the next thing I want to talk about, which I think is a fucking brilliant thing, and I want to ask you guys what you think it is. I wrote, I think this is a super cool thing, but the more I researched, like all of the solar clock, the fucking color antenna, all this is really fucking cool stuff. But the more I researched, the fucking weirder it got, and I am not kidding. And so I really want to tell you guys, or I want to tell you guys about this, but I'm going to ask you first. What do you guys think of transdental communication? What do you think that is?
First off, you say dental, so I think teeth.
Yeah, I thought a phone
I
in
think
the
my
teeth.
mouth. So transdental, I think. and
Vibrations with the jaw.
Well, with what we're saying in like this assisted, you know,
Augmented
augmented thing. So when you speak, your mouth translates through a digital signal.
Right.
So let's say
that's pretty.
let's say you touch the corner of your jawbone, and that's the accept call button.
Oh yeah.
And you just open your mouth and talk like, oh, Lauren's calling, badoop, and you push the button and you just open your mouth and talk, and it senses your jawbone.
All right, so we're gonna do a case of hot and cold, and you've got a brilliant idea, but you're a little cold.
All right.
So we're gonna go with Casey. What do you think transdental communication is? He's going in the right direction.
Honestly, probably something similar to what Sean said, but I don't know.
Let's lower the tech on it. Joe, what do you think?
I think it's a speaker that you put into your like maybe like something that vibrates off your jaw and then you're able to hear in your head.
Yeah, it's still a little bit more low tech. Do you want to go for another one, Casey?
I don't know. Let me stew on it for a second. Unless you're gonna
I'm gonna fucking fall right into this can of beans.
Just
Bluetooth
let it
button?
go. Enlighten me.
All right, so
Amazon
Enlighten us.
wish list.
All right, so it's a still as yet in progress. Actually, we're gonna come back to this.
Oh, cliffhanger!
Cliffhanger,
Bam.
a little bit of tension. We'll be back, and well, it doesn't really matter to you guys because we'll be right back.
Wah, wah, wah,
Here we go.
wah.
Products and ads.
Plugs.
Do you have enemies? Are you tired of them having the upper hand? Introducing the Shark Cannon. Hit your enemies with a blast of the ocean from miles away.
Me leg was taken by one of them goddamn shark cannons, and ye was not juvenile by any means, but that motherfucker took me leg by proxy.
Shark Cannon is brought to you by Risky Pistols. We're here to introduce the finest weaponry in the world. And our Shark Cannon is our state-of-the-art cannon. We put 3-foot juvenile sharks into it. Sometimes lemon, sometimes great white, doesn't matter. But you can shoot them at your enemies from over a mile away. And if you need somebody to be removed immediately, we've got a shark knife just for you.
Shark cannon, get one today.
Demon X exercise equipment, bringing you the exercising demons specialty.
We're not only here to exercise your body, we're here to exercise your demons.
Exorcist, that's what we got for you.
X.
XX Exorcist brings you our new product line, the 300-mile treadmill.
Aloe Vera Instruments Texas Instrument Calculator.
Our calculators are now made with aloe vera.
We're about to aloe verify the amount that you calculated.
Texas Aloe Vera Instruments.
Welcome blah 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 blah. God damn. I'm so glad we did that. Here we go. Welcome back to Black Sheep and Bad Apples, where we are talking about human augmentation.
You said welcome black last time.
Yeah, I did say that. I think we're gonna edit it out, but I don't trust Sean.
I want to
edit.
keep that.
Yeah, I don't trust him to edit it out. Yeah, welcome black to black.
I was just thinking during this commercial
black
break
sheep
though.
And black apples.
When this stuff that we're talking about is not the stuff that terrifies me the most, but it is the stuff I think is the most terrifying is going to use to kill us.
It's honestly a logical fear because I'm definitely with you. Any kinds of these like AI augmentations, any kinds of stuff like that. That's why I'm really glad I didn't find anything about cognitive augmentation. Thank fuck. But all the stuff is like like it seems like you might, if you get a chip in your brain that helps you like control your body, there's no stopping anybody from hacking that chip and taking over your body. And so I definitely feel that fear.
This fear has been implemented in us since a young age for
Since
any
iRobot.
Like,
Maximum Overdrive.
Since iRobot,
Oh, yeah.
or even Terminator. I don't know, like or
There
Face
isn't-
Off. I guess
there-
is that no? That's more.
No.
That's just I don't know.
Yeah, but there is
That's just beautiful.
there is an interesting connection tonight that's going to happen with the Terminator. So we're going to go ahead and like kind of power through. When we last left, I asked you guys what you thought of transdental communication. You guys were like kind of on it, but you guys largely missed it on the head. And so I'm going to go ahead and explain it to you a little bit.
Go ahead.
It's still an in-progress Bluetooth tooth that allows Harbison, which is the guy with our antenna that we were talking about. So let me explain. He's an inventor and loves to create new sensory things. So anyway, he created this
Sounds like
Bluetooth
Lex
tooth
Luthor.
that Harbison uses to communicate via Morse code. So you guys were really close. It works like this. There are two teeth that are modified, one which, when pressed, sends a vibration to the second tooth, which receives the signal, which vibrates in your mouth. When two people have this technology, they can communicate via Bluetooth. From the video that I saw that was dated around April 3rd, 2017, they are still wired technology that requires a lot more work to be put in to make fully wireless. But the strangest part was learning of the person to whom he was communicating. Now, this is where the story gets really fucking weird, guys. I am very excited and also a little nervous to bring this up. Moon Ribas, a Spanish avant-garde artist and cyborg activist, is by far the coolest part of the story that I discovered. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you watch her Searching for My Sense, which was published by TEDx Talks, you can see all about it. On the YouTube video, they discuss cyborgism and the ability to augment the human body. Again, it's kind of hard to explain, but she's an implant that helps her, quote, sense earthquakes around the world. In her talk, you can see and hear that this started as an experiment in opening up new senses and obtaining them for practical use. An example she gives is she had some special earrings that vibrated when things moved in front of her. So she had these... I lost my spot. She had these special earrings that vibrated when introduced to stimuli, and when she turned them to face around behind her, she could actually feel people pass behind her. So she could effectively see behind her by feeling and stimulating the sense. And she could actually feel people pass behind her. After a while, she decided to develop this into a technology that she could use to feel earthquakes. Now,
That's very similar to a lot of animals, where they could just like they sense like frequencies in the air and they know like things are happening.
And we are all animals essentially. So that's I keep circulating back to. I feel that this is just something that we innately just have in place, whether you're in tune with it or not.
Yeah.
And I get the enhancement aspect of it, but I can't help but question it being implemented within us about being something that we need to purchase or attain or modify ourselves with this technology in order to attain this, rather than, I don't know, just simply being able to do it naturally. Or being trained to do it naturally.
If like any of this would happen naturally, like over with evolution, if like we had to adapt through certain situations, like through another ice age or like anything like that, we would have to adapt certain and evolve to be able to adapt. So like we could develop some of these on our own.
Before we get too off subject, I do agree with what you guys are saying. I kind of feel like some of these things we're trying to readapt to ourselves, kind of by what you're explaining a little bit as sensory things that we're already. There's a bunch of ways that we can just do that on our own if we acknowledge it and reuse our sensories. Close your eyes to feel better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Color, sound, a bunch of different things where if you take away from one sensory, you adapt to another one where a blind man can feel better than a type of deal and stuff. But go on with what you're saying.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Go on with your bad
so
self.
from what I understand, that there's a little bit of of kind of like there's something that I really need to note here, in the sense that from what I got from Wikipedia, which as we all know isn't exactly reliable, it says that, quote, implanting online seismic sensors in her feet that allow her to feel earthquakes through vibrations is the way that she's allowed to feel them. But I was doing a little bit more research, and in her TED Talk, she talks about how she feels vibrations through a vibrating device in her arm that's actually connected through all sorts of seismographic sensors throughout the world. And if I'm correct, I think that all of them. And so she gets to literally feel the vibration of the earth constantly. And in a couple of her videos that you can look up,
Seems like a hassle.
yeah, and in a couple of her videos that you can look up, she actually describes how like it was kind of an issue that would like wake her up in the middle of the night, like fucking panicked, because all of a sudden there was this huge earthquake going on throughout the world.
Haven't we all, or at some point or another, experienced? I'm sorry to play devil's advocate so much, but haven't we all experienced that at one point or another, where we can feel something coming before it happens?
No, but you can feel it coming through intuition.
Yeah.
She can fucking physically feel it. It moves through her arm as this tiny little vibration, and if it's a huge earthquake, it's a fucking body rumbling fucking sensation.
And I don't know. I've personally experienced those physical.
Have you done it through technology?
No, but that's what's
Yeah.
cool. That's what's cool is like
That's
I
where it's
see
really
I
cool.
see where you're coming from. All right,
Yeah.
let's
I
hear what you have
guess-
to say.
All right, and so I don't know if she can feel it through sensors in her feet, which is what I heard from Wikipedia, or if it's through her being attached via like the internet and all the seismographs on the planet. I truly don't know. I couldn't truly find the answer for that. So what I'm going to go ahead and say is make up your own opinion, or look into it. Maybe correct us if you guys are listening to
into
us
it.
and have information in the future.
I think it has something to do with magnets, but I don't know anything what we're talking about, and it's just the weird science in my mind.
Yeah. And so the interesting thing about the guy with the antenna, Neil Harbison, and this lady named Moon, what was it? Moon Rebus? Moon Rebus. The interesting thing is that they were childhood friends, so I'm going to describe to you guys a little bit about this. The following information is gleaned from the video hashtag Misa Cyborg, which I might be pronouncing incorrectly, by the YouTube channel Cyborg Artists. A quote by Harbison says, quote, "Moon and I are childhood friends. When we were small, we're from a small town in the north of Barcelona. Since I was 11, Moon would tell me the colors, and I would try to memorize them. We compared our realities because we knew that they were different, that I saw in grayscale and she saw in color. And then I became interested in sensing color, but I didn't want to change my black and white vision because to me, seeing in grayscale has its advantages. I have better night vision than Moon." So that's fucking cool stuff right there. So there are also other implants that allow different things. The solar crown, which is essentially the internal clock that we've already talked about. But there's also an implantable compass, which is literally as fucking cool as it sounds. And so, from what I understand, there was this convention that they had a couple years ago, and they got people together, and everybody who went through I imagine the red flags and hoops that you have to jump through. What they did was somewhere in their chest, they implanted this little piece of technology. And what it does, I know it sounds scary. It sounds scary, but it's super cool, especially when you consider like the survival technology that this involves, and also like the military aspects that you can. Oh my god, it's super cool. Anyway, so they implanted this little box.
Just learn astrology.
Anyway, they implanted this thing in these people's chests, and what happens is when you turn around and you face magnetic north, a small vibration will go off in your chest, and so it's literally an internal compass. It's a compass that you have with you that you don't get to read and be like, "That's north." You fucking feel it.
Is it magnetic north or regular north?
From what I understand, it's magnetic north. I could be wrong about that.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It better be magnetic north.
Well, that's a little off.
What's the difference?
No, that's directly
that a
on
stupid
our
question?
compass.
No, magnetic north goes to that like weird giant lake in Canada that has like a bunch of like iron ore at the bottom of it, and it's just
Yeah, it's
like
not
that's the reason
technically
why
perfect
all our
north.
compasses go that way.
Yeah.
okay.
But it is north.
It's like 20 degrees off or something like that.
7?
Like, 7? Like, that's a
So
lot.
what I
That's a
got
big
out of
Oh,
listening-
like true north.
Yeah.
That's
So-
something like I thought that was like the true north, and what compasses read was like they're 7 degrees off. It's like a bunch of conspiracy behind 7 degrees off.
7 degrees is separation.
That's for another podcast.
Yeah,
but-
definitely for another podcast.
Yeah.
So what I got out of listening to their talks and their interviews and
Do we
and
know that if one of them is a robot?
we know that both of them are not robots, from what I know. Also, I've got this.
Sounds like
got
like a weird geeky kid and his loser robot, or his awesome robot friend that like teaches him things.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm kind of
I'm
biased.
thinking of a cartoon, but
Loser
like, I have a cartoon in my
Lame
head that's playing
robot.
while you're going through this. And I'm like, they're both little kids, and like they're
Well-
teaching each other colors. It's kind of cool. Like,
And I'm really biased towards Moon Rebus because she actually shares my birthday and is 5 years older than me, and she's a little cutie.
Oh, kind of cool as far as
like someone you would
numerology,
make if you were making a robot.
5, 24, 5 years, 5,
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. So what I got out of their talks and listening to their interviews and stuff like that is that they're actually genuinely inspired to create literally new senses in order for us to like feel new things. The one thing I do want to say about this is they've literally had to address the fact that you've got to charge these bitches. Like you've got to charge all, whether it's the solar crown that tells you what time of day it is, whether
I
it's your
lose
magnetic
wires, man.
compass, whether it's your fucking. Apparently, every 5 to 7 months, Neil Harbison has to change his antenna battery. But yeah, it's really funny to think about, honestly.
Well, even people with like spinal cord stimulators, like my mother, she
Yeah.
has to recharge that shit every 24 hours or
Yeah, and
something.
I would
And-
say that she's a medical cyborg.
Yeah, and it's maybe not enhancing her normal human state,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as her everyday function, it does improve
It
upon
does.
that.
Which I'm also going to get to that because there's really cool technology about that.
Do you think you could wean yourself off of certain new senses to be able to feel them naturally? So say you implement this halo ring, tells you the time of day vibrational sensor thing that is literally implanted into you, communicating with your thing, but you each day like wean yourself off it a little bit to where like you have it, or say each week or every couple weeks, where the sensation, the vibration gets a little less to where you just feel that naturally, and your body is trained to just know. So other sensories then,
Well,
after it's
you would
not
have
working,
your
the
body would
sensories
have
take
to
over.
do that naturally. So like your body would these things would have to be like enhancing vibrations that are already around us instead of making external vibrations.
Yeah, okay. So I was with that further in mind is, do you think you would get addicted to sensations that are not that we're implementing to the body, where after a while, if you took those away, your body would feel the lack of a sensation every time the sun came around and you felt it? You felt like you should feel vibration, but it's
As a
not
response
there.
to that, do you feel that dawn would change feeling if you suddenly became blind and couldn't see it? Because what you're saying about being addicted to a sense, I think you mean reliant on a sense, because I definitely agree that it would be super unnerving if Neil Harbison, Antenna Boy, if he had his antenna just all of a sudden removed and didn't have access to it. I think it would throw him off. I think everything would be weird. And honestly, at the point that he's integrated with it, because I think it's something like 7-10 years that he's been a part of like this machine, I think that it would actually lead to a lot of depression, which is going back to what I was saying about being blind. All of a sudden, if you lose your sense of sight and you can't see the beautiful dawn, you don't know what time it is, you can't figure out like how things work because now your entire world has changed. I would say that, yeah, you're gonna get kind of pissy about it at the very least.
Yeah, that's
Well,
yeah.
I'm curious
I
about.
can see that for like the color and for things like that, but like the clock, like
The solar clock would be different.
yeah, like
It's an amenity.
That's exactly right. Like,
Just odd sidetrack. I thought it'd be curious of how would affect your emotions
Now,
once you introduce new sensations, and then if you took them away.
yeah.
Because
So
then you might feel like a withdrawal symptom
Yeah.
because you have a
An
sensation you
emotional-
have not felt before, and it affects your brain in a new
So
chemical way.
in the sense that you've got all 5 senses and you're a completely healthy human being and you get a solar clock imbued in your head, I think that having that removed wouldn't be that detrimental. You could still kind of make sense of the world. But if you were a blind person who had a solar clock, put into your head, and it tells you what time of day it is and whether it's time for you to wake up and stuff like that, I think that would be much more disorienting simply because you've already got this predisposition to being, you're predisposed to being kind of.
I think there's a lot of there's much easier ways to find out what time of day it is.
Yeah, I think so.
Even just like blind people, you feel the heat of the day. Like us, we can see the sun. There are other ways of doing that.
Yeah. You know what? There aren't other ways of doing. Improving your eyesight.
Ooh, okay. These are
improving your eyesight is like the hardest thing in the world. No matter how much beta carotene you eat from carrots. Yes, I said it with a P. Carrots. No matter how much carrots you eat, you're not going to improve any damage that's been pre-done to your eye. But I've got good news, ladies and gentlemen. Since we're talking about human augmentation, there's a fucking sweet company in Canada that's fucking working on it. Augmentics is working on a bionic eye. With a short 10-minute surgery, you can correct your vision up to 3 times better than 20/20. Admittedly, with most people experiencing vision correction closer to 2.5 times better, but it's still pretty close to 3. So according to, quote, B Superman, which is a channel on YouTube, hosted the creator of the bionic eye, Dr. Garth Webb. It's a very simple procedure with a small incision being cut into the side of the retina, which I think might be the right term, but it could be the wrong one. The exterior film, anyway. Being cut into the and a small being cut into the side of the retina, and a small injectable lens is then inserted, where the bionic lens naturally unfolds into the position directly behind the iris. Due to the small incision and minimal invasiveness of the procedure, the eye automatically reseals, and the lens is, quote, functional virtually immediately, end quote.
How long has this technology been around?
So from what I know, I might be getting some details wrong, but I think what I know is pretty correct. 4 years ago they started developing it. 2 years ago they put it into into what would be like the FDA, Food and Drug Administration's protocols to get it certified. And so what I was looking at earlier today on their website, Augmentics, yeah. So in Canada, it'll be available in 1 to 2 years. Here in the States, it'll be available from 2 to 3 years, because I think they've been working on it for something close to 7 years. But I think it's something closer to like 5 years that they've been working on it.
Okay, so as of now, there's no studies on the long-term potential adverse effects of this product.
Well, from what I know, they are studying that right now. There's a couple of people who have been given surgery and are reporting great things, from what I understand. I haven't seen anything to the contrary, so I assume everything's going well.
I would say with something that's only been in term for 5 to 10 years, long-term effect studies aren't possible quite yet. So it takes a lifetime of
it has to go through like at least 2 generations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna break here in a minute, and I'm gonna show you guys the I think it's like a short 7 or 10-minute video or something that I watched, and it's got some really cool science. I'll go ahead and link that as well into the YouTube description.
I love when a teacher brings in a TV for the class.
Oh, man. and it's just fascinating science, especially for me, because the selfish reason that we're doing human augmentation tonight is because I thought about like what I would do to myself if I had the ability. And I was like...
Oh, Inspector Gadget hands.
Exactly. Inspector Gadget everything.
Yeah,
you know
without a doubt. That's what I thought as soon as we were talking about this. I kept thinking about Inspector Gadget hands.
Yeah, and so like all the
I want a lighter for a thumb.
So I saw this the other day. I just went into the hospital for X-rays and stuff on my hand because I heard it and stuff like that. And as I was walking up to the ER, there was a little sign outside that said robotic assisted surgery available here. And I had to think because the last time I came to the hospital for was my hand, and it was for stitches and surgery on it. And then the next time I came there, I was getting X-rays, you know, and I'm looking at, you know, I just broke a bone and stuff. But I was trying to picture robotic assisted surgery when I went there, and you know,
it's like a robot walks into the OR with like a mask over his mouth. He's like, I
Just
am your
dabbing
surgeon.
the actual doctor with a cloth on his forehead and it goes away. Like,
But with you know, like the talk of all this, the eyes, you know, the like LASIK surgery has been a thing for quite some time. You know, we're going in with LASIK, we're really surgically getting precise in the eyeballs, and I feel like a friend of ours brought up the other day where, or maybe that was you, where pretty soon we're gonna have a one like a smartwatch like we already have, where you got apps on it, but you can put in contacts.
That's the next thing I was going to talk about, is because you guys will see it in the video that we show here in the next break. But there's this technology is created with, and again, you'll see a little bit more detail. But with the technology that's being created, there's actually on the outermost portion of this contact lens, which sits directly behind the iris, they're actually leaving room for you to install different things. And so you could.
how do you have room?
Honestly, I can't even explain the technology. I'm not a fucking scientific genius, so fucking consult the experts. But from what I understand is that they're leaving this little room, like this wild card section, so you can plug in different variables. So you could have like, you know, maybe you've got an infrared option, a night vision option. I don't know that those are real things, but I know in the video that again we're gonna watch, that he talked about actually being able to put a small projector in your eye, and again brace yourself because I don't know all the science. But what he wants to do is he wants to be able to use the light within your eye to project using your retina in front of you, augmented reality, which is a whole new fucking world. And so imagine being able to pull up your phone, but not having to pull up your phone. All you have to do is think about it in the way your eye muscles move, which is actually a point that I'm going to bring
so
up.
creepy.
Very fascinating. The way your eye muscles move brings this up. So the next point that I want to bring up is by putting in this bionic lens. The bionic lens responds to the muscles inside the eye with 1/100th of the energy it takes to move the organic natural lens, which basically translates to never feeling fatigue of the eyes. Yeah. So that's some amazing technology. Like your eyes are never going to get tired, and if you want the option,
does that mean we'll sleep with our eyes open?
No, it just means that you won't. So the corneal muscles won't get tired from having to contract it. So to look really far and then read a book, and then look really far and read a book, they won't have to stress themselves as much.
They'll have more precision.
Yeah, and so it's absolutely terrifying the fact that we can have maybe our retinas hacked in the future.
Yeah,
I think it's
especially for the augmented reality side of
Yeah.
it. Like people
Which
just
it-
make it look like someone's coming to attack you.
Yeah. 'Cause that's a scary thing. If you I think you and I were talking about this, Joe. The augmented reality Walking Dead game or whatever,
Yeah.
where it's like you hold up your phone and then there's like if you're in a normal corridor or if like a library. If you hold up your phone, on the images on your phone will show zombies walking through that same corridor where they don't exist.
Like
and
Pokemon Go.
Yeah, like Pokemon Go essentially, and it's fucking creepy.
I feel like a part of this is like a development of technology that we're all kind of afraid of. Is like how invasive is this? And if we have apps that we can see in front of our eyes, what if that gets hacked? What if we
Yeah.
get a virus? What if we this? What
Well,
if we
yeah,
that?
like
And,
nothing's like just solo now. Everything's connected. Everything's like
Our friend
well-
Antenna Boy, Mr. Harbison, he actually talked about how he got his antenna, which, as you guys may remember, is connected via the internet to a couple of friends. He actually got his antenna hacked and had people sending him random colors and pictures and images and stuff like that. To which he responded something to the effect of like, "It was actually not that bad. It was really fun, really enjoyable."
So he was
You
looking
just see a
at
kaleidoscope?
porn.
I don't know what he was looking
And
at.
he caught a virus.
yeah, he got a virus that infected his brain, and now he's got meningitis.
Well, and that is what we did with our smartphones. Basically, as soon as we got the technology, was we started watching porn on our phones.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what's going to happen with this.
I imagine so.
There is already a huge market for 3D porn that people are creating, and it's insane. They have to wear these like harnesses with cameras all over them, and
there's like the POV VR porn or whatever. Yeah, it's fucking weird. So again, we've talked about human augmentation and how there's 3 different parts. We talked about augmented cognition, which there's not really a whole lot to talk about. We've talked about augmented senses, which I find is a fascinating field. But when we come back from our break, what we're going to talk about is augmented action, which is, oh man, I'm so fucking horny to talk about this. It's so dirty, like
Sigourney Weaver, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear about the tie-in to Sigourney Weaver, you'll have to listen to the rest of this podcast as we go to break. Peace.
Wah, wah, wah.
Porn on hologram.
Porn on hologram.
Pornonhologram.com.
Introducing the survival rake. Have you ever been worried about crash landing on an island? Well, now we've got a miniature, fully functional survival rake for you.
It'll rake the fear out of anything that surrounds you.
Now with roadside assistance, you can use it as a flare. You can use it as a puncture wound. You can use it to stitch up the tires that you're puncturing.
Also, with our newest technology, we've introduced a secret compartment.
It'll rake up your fellow survivors into a pile to where you can eat them upon a fire burning at whatever heat that you like.
Now with roadside flare technology, you can use roadside assistance service and OnStar to save yourself anywhere you might find yourself with the survival rake.
And if you're a witch, guess what? We've introduced the technology of brooms. You can fly the fuck away on it. You put it right between your legs, and you just cast your certain spell, and you don't need a survival rake anymore, because you've got your own airplane.
Survival broom. Brought to you by Mattel.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back to Black Sheep and Bad Apples. I'm your host, Lauren O'Brien, as you already know. But what we're going to go ahead and talk about is I just showed you guys that video for the bionic lens created by Augmentics. What do you guys think about it? We'll start with you, Joe.
Oh, I am terrified by it. It looks like some awesome technology with a lot of great things that you could do with it. But the cons are way outnumber the pros for this to me.
What are some of the cons that you like? What are the red flag cons for you?
That there would be no way for me to physically check what kind of things they put into the actual system of it.
Yeah, in regards to, so if you guys watch the video, again, I'll post it on YouTube. He's talking about from what I understand, the video part of it, the projecting part of it.
The projecting, even if a small Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, I feel like you could easily have that. Like the doctor could put them in all of them, and then you'd just be able to trigger and be able to watch what everyone else is looking at.
So we'll scrap all the amenities that might be coming later, because again, he talked about them as being potentials, not something that's here. What do you think about the original bionic eye?
It's awesome, but I don't know if there's a reason why we would have to replace the glasses right now. Then again, I don't wear glasses, so I don't know how inconvenient they are.
Well, as somebody who has broken glasses, I could tell you
I just saw you messing with them.
Yeah, it's super inconvenient. And the ability to implant and not just wear contacts, I think is a brilliant idea.
The one thing that I thought about throughout the whole thing there is I would be completely on board with it, is if we did all police had to use it for one generation and we could use that for a test market. We'd be able to see what they have that be something with cameras, and instead of their body jacket have that.
Yeah, so it's the replacement for their body cams.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if we do that for a whole generation and when there's no mess ups, I'd be on board with signing up for it.
You know, I'd be interested in that as well. In regards to the version that they have now that's out, just corrective lenses. Again, I wear glasses, so I am very excited to kind of jump on that. The price tag is like $3,200 for each eye, though. So
well, what would
it's a
stop
little...
like them to put this into a bunch of babies and not tell them that they ever did this?
Yeah, but do you really think that people are going to be that sinister?
Not
Yes.
sinister, but they would be able to like track us easier. They would be able to pinpoint very easily.
Are you talking about the modified version of the bionic eye, or
Yes,
the...
I am.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Because I was going to say with the original, I think it's just like a couple bits of like
Well,
polymer
but that also
plastic.
wouldn't be a sinister thing. That would be them like thinking they're doing something good for us. Like all kids would be born with 20/20 plus vision.
Yeah.
And we have it as a thing. Like we do it to all babies. And then, like, eventually, then, like if someone's under, a doctor knows what he's doing, he's able to tamper with it.
Yeah, and see, I'm definitely against being able to put any kind of like information tracking and harvest, like any kind of intelligence that you could gain from me wearing these bionic lenses. I'm definitely opposed to. But I think the idea behind the original bionic lenses is kind of a beautiful idea, and he kind of bloviates into a world of like, and then eventually we might be able to put these things into it, which is a fascinating thing. But again, I want us to focus on strictly the part of it that's an actual thing, like the part of it that's not a theory. So Ms. Casey, what do you think about this bionic eye? Again, focusing on strictly the bionic parts of it.
I think it's really intriguing, and I think if used for the right reasons and if it's in the right hands, the technology could be astronomical, and it could really propel our society into greater research and understanding.
Yeah.
And I think that
Could improve a lot of things.
I think that it could improve a lot of things on micro and macro levels of the like, and I think that it's definitely, I can't help but have it naturally bring up concerns that I would have,
Yeah,
like,
of course.
but fraying away from the theoretical hyperboles of what could happen.
Yeah. See, I'm gung.
It's definitely a
Game changer.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gung ho about it. Honestly,
Yeah,
for
it's
the
a game
fate-
changer
yeah,
for sure.
It
It makes me think that we're bringing every little kid's and adult's game fanatic like
Yeah.
vision into reality. It's definitely it's 2020. It's
2020, baby. It's 2020.
And whoa, here we go.
3 times or 2.5 times better than 2020. I'll have you know. I also do have some reservations about it, but I find it as a person again with ocular dystrophy, I think that it's fucking a brilliant idea. So we're gonna go ahead and ask you, Sean, before we move on to our next portion of this podcast. What do you think about the bionic lens?
I mean, I think it's cool technology that we're pushing forward on. I've seen friends of mine get LASIK. I've seen a lot of people go from my dad's old boss that had not seen been I guess legally blind maybe for years and stuff, getting LASIK surgery to seeing colors that he had never seen in his life before. So I can only imagine the further we can push this is awesome.
I agree.
Like being able to physically see a Kodak quality, picture
Image,
type
yeah.
of deal and stuff. Some things that we're like, oh, let's put it on this setting, almost like we're doing a lot of filters for anything and stuff. A lot of times we take a photo and we filter it until we see it the way we want to. But
We could see through Instagram filters.
but
No, that's
Everyone would be
I think
so much
you guys are
prettier.
talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
that's a basic way. All those
Yeah.
are based on filters that were already made for real. You know what I mean? So like even a real photographer has different filters they use to make the photo come out the way they
Yeah.
want to and stuff. the way they want to see it and stuff.
But that's
then
not reality.
They manipulate. That's what I'm like.
Well,
they manipulate it a little bit, but
Yeah.
what do you consider reality? Because it becomes kind of an interesting point to a degree of what are your lenses seeing in your natural eyes versus what mine are seeing and what Lauren's are seeing and all around. And when I look at the mountainscape or the cityscape or the whatever thing, and I'm like, holy shit, that is a picture right there, and you're like, yeah, it's all right.
Well, that's
But
because
you don't
it's
see- I'd like to
individually
pick this up.
beautiful to you, instead of it being the exact same for all of us.
Well, in picking this up, I think what Sean is expressing is reality is based upon perspective, and when our eyes are terrible, we've got terrible perspective, if you will. And so by correcting that, what it allows us to do is to gain not necessarily the same or similar point of view as another person, but what we're now able to do is be able to, for a lack of a better phrase, filter everything through our own lens and to be able to explain that to somebody else the way we see things.
But that's also different from like that first guy we were talking about with the color blindness, where he didn't want to like physically change that in his mind.
Yeah.
He still wanted to see in that gray scale.
Indeed.
Because like he knew that was an individual, unique perspective. But this seems like one step closer to all of us being the same exact person.
I'm sorry to interject, but do you think that by allowing us all to be of the same, so we'll look at it as pedestals. Do you think by allowing somebody to be on the third, being the highest pedestal, allowing them, not necessarily requiring them to meet that, is kind of a bad thing?
No.
Because I think by providing this service, I think it's generally speaking a good thing, which we'll actually get to because we talked about Terminators, and there's some really cool fucking Terminator good things happening.
And that's where like I do see it like an unfair advantage is a bad word for it, but that's all I could think of right now. Where like eventually it's going to be like you're gonna have to do this to compete with everybody else and be on like a normal ground.
Well, I think ultimately it's not going to make any difference because it's creating a more of a control. We say 20/20. That's a control on what we create as a standard of vision.
I see what you're saying.
From who?
But it's like we were talking about the internet before, about how like back in the day, like we didn't like no one had the internet, so we had such a longer time to work on things. But now like the internet is almost a necessity, and you need that if you're going to college.
Yeah.
So we're slowly gonna get to a point where we're all gonna need that to be able to project right in front of us.
To be able to.
As much as I would love to continue this conversation, we do have time constraints, which I want to get into.
I thought this was a 16-hour podcast. I was promised that when I sat down.
Nobody promised you that, Joe. I don't know where you got that information.
Well, I've been wearing a diaper for a week.
He brought over a sleeping bag and his diaper.
Is that your dog? Anyway, nobody promised you the 16-hour podcast. What I promised you was a podcast about human augmentation, which we're going to get back into. So we've discussed augmented cognition, which is something that's, fairly difficult to define, but you can find it in the previous parts of this episode. We talked about augmented senses being the navigational compass that can be imbued in your body, the solar crown, the guy who can see colors with a fucking antenna. But now what we're going to talk about is the most interesting part of fucking being a cyborg, of human augmentation, of just, honestly, this is where I fucking love thinking about things.
Jerk off robots.
No, what? God damn it.
I need
Anyway, so augmented action is basically any kind of technology that allows you to augment your action, that allows you to further your behavior, to further your abilities beyond what you are physically capable of. And so the first thing I want to talk about is a Japanese company called Cyberdyne, which is where we get into technology, the Terminator and technology. Like, these guys are fucking on it. They're building this exosuit, which is about to be our next subject is exosuits. So a Japanese company called Cyberdyne has created an exosuit for people who are going through physical therapy and those who need general assistance. The hybrid assisted limb, or HAL, is designed to either support or extend the abilities of the user. The two versions of the HAL 3, or the two versions are HAL 3, which only focuses on the functionality of the legs and the ability to help therapeutically recover the ability to use them. And HAL 5, which is for the legs, torso, and arms. And from what I understand, that's meant for people who are going through a full body physical therapy. I couldn't get a whole lot of information about it because the entire website of Cyberdyne, or rather I should say a majority of it, is in Japanese. And so I couldn't really get a whole lot of information about the rest of it.
That was all the jerk-off robot stuff.
Yeah, that's where the jerk-off robots came in.
I knew I was close.
But I can tell you, HAL is for rehab and recovery, but its bigger brother, the Guardian XO, is not.
Bigger brother?
It's bigger brother. So we're going to go ahead and, do you guys want to talk about the rehab exosuits, or should we go right into actual exosuits?
This is the stuff that scares me, because this is where we're gonna end up like suiting up all the senior centers with all these old guys, with like load them all up, and then they're gonna be able to like rip college kids in half and like be able to skateboard for the first time.
Oh,
and,
and
Which means our first draft at war, whenever we have one, is going to be all the old people, not all the young people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all right with that.
They'll
Well,
put
and
on
they
the-
can shoot
they'll put
guns
on the-
better.
They'll put on the suits. They'll go in
They're not
blast
allergic
them,
to
but
gluten.
it's like, yo, I'm only expecting anyways, and it's probably going to be half old vets, and they're going to be like, yeah, I'll kill another time. Like, let's do it. And they'll put on their
Round-
Superman
round two,
exosuits,
round
and
three.
I've been waiting for another necklace of ears.
All right, and so
Fight.
when we think about exosuits, again, I talked about how we were going to talk about the power suit from Alien. You're not gonna, was that Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not gonna Sigourney Weaver anybody anytime soon. But I do want to say that, man, the technology is so fucking exciting. Like, as far as we've come, it's beautiful. So we don't have anything that can actually, you could just wear and like wear around, and you could hide underneath your clothes and stuff like that. But I do want to introduce you guys to Sarcos Robotics. So Sarcos Robotics has built the Guardian XO, again, the bigger brother of the HAL. It's built the Guardian XO. It's a full-body, battery-powered exosuit / exoskeleton made for lifting and maneuvering heavy objects up to 200 pounds. Now, if I remember correctly, and I'm going to get some details wrong, more or less, but I think the actual suit itself weighs about 200 pounds. But it's actually capable of, quote, offloading 100% of the exoskeleton's weight during use. So it doesn't feel like you're wearing anything. It feels like you're throwing your arms through the fucking wind. It feels like you're walking through the wind. There's nothing holding you back. So it's a very interesting device. So it's a relatively heavy device, but it doesn't feel like it is. It's automated to move fluidly with the user and to respond to delicate commands. Its arms have different, quote, effectors, which are essentially its hands, and you can change them for different things. There's like one that's like a cupped hand, like on top, like fingers on top and the thumb on bottom, where you can grab poles. There's just a couple of different quote effectors. It has triggers that you push to activate the ability to move the suit. So you have to hold these triggers in order to walk around and to move the suit and stuff like that. But one of the coolest things about it is by releasing the trigger, we'll say that you pick up a 200-pound object and you hold it in front of you, next to your face, and then you release the trigger. You can actually pull your arm out of the exosuit, and it will hold the arm there, because it's got a locking mechanism that allows you to go in, and maybe you've got to untie a rope, or maybe you've got to undo wire or something. So
For
you can
mechanics and like lifting heavy objects up, working underneath them.
so you can pick heavy things up and then freeze it into place so that you can go and work on them. And it's honestly really brilliant when you consider how much work we can do with human fingers rather than with these effectors, which are literally just stiffened plates. They're like a hand cupping something sideways.
But you know they do like delicate tests where they like try and pick up like a bunch of kittens and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like,
There's
that never go well.
There's a video you can watch on YouTube actually called, I believe it's called Beta Test, and there's this, I believe she's either Australian, actually she's more likely New Zealand, but she goes and she tries out this exosuit, man, and holy fuck, it's sweet, buddy.
Oh.
So what do you guys think about wearing exosuits? What do you guys think about wearing a 200-pound device that could allow you to lift? Because this is something I didn't mention, actually. With this 200-pound device, you can actually pick up 200 pounds and make it feel like 5 pounds. What do you guys think? Sean, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think it'd be cool. I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head what like normal practical use that would be good for besides just.
Well, we're in the band Merit Parcel with very heavy equipment
You
plug.
know, like I mean, I get that it would be like a convenient thing, but I don't know. That's what I'm trying to debate what this suit like. Am I going to be a mechanic shop that's now lifting car parts, like pulling the engine out instead of having a crane? Well, what's the difference in having a $100,000 exosuit to pull the engine out versus a $200 crane?
Which actually nailed the price on the head.
How much was it?
$100,000 a year, but they come in maintenance and service everything for you. So
But
a year, you don't get to buy it.
They're
You get to
also
rent
just
it.
the skeleton of what you have.
Indeed.
Yeah, you
So you
just step
could
into
put
this.
stuff on it. You could make it a little like a real suit. Put like armor all around it.
Yeah.
Like, you could put like wheels on the bottom. Find some way to propel it. Like there are plenty of things that you like. It's
What
like
the
a strong
military
suit.
could do with it, I definitely
Yeah,
think
like-
could go a long ways. But what the standard like public, individual is going to use for it in any general basic daily job anywhere, like
Yeah.
I think
Well-
we got that figured out already with way cheaper.
You teach
cheaper
monkeys how to
items.
use them and send them to war.
I feel like the more modernized that this becomes, this product or this technology becomes, I could see my brain just automatically goes to like 1,000 years in the future, and as far as our evolution and us as human beings, I could see us using this technology to replace our everyday need to lift ends, maintain ends, and service certain anything within any industrialization.
Yeah.
And I see us evolving to have skinnier, scrawnier arms and legs
Like
and
the
torsos
tall gray
and
aliens?
and
See, but
larger
I-
brains to maintain this technology and do it at a cheaper, more affordable, more efficient rate.
Yeah, and see, I want to get to you in a second, Joe. But one thing that I noticed about it is that it's not. So as I said in the beginning of this podcast, technology is an extension of the human ability. It's not a minimization of our things to do things.
Yeah, but
Our ability to do
with extending our human abilities with using these technologies to naturally enhance us, our natural form is
Enhance.
going to alter due to.
Well, see, I disagree in regards to like if I want to become a human forklift at work, and I just have to jump into the suit. That doesn't stop me from. I'm not going to wear the suit performing my day-to-day tasks because now it's too bulky. It's
Well,
too
this is the first draft of the suit.
exactly. So there's going to be a lot of versions of it. And honestly, the reason that I bring up bionic eye and the exosuit is for a very selfish reason. I think I've said it before on the podcast. Is that if I had the opportunity, I'd fix my eyes and I would get an exosuit that I could wear under a 3-piece suit, and I'd fucking just lift up cars for people that needed to like change their tires and stuff like that. And so
Yeah, but if you,
I see where you're talking about
the
because
more
people
often,
get more lazy.
Yes, the more
Yeah.
often that this technology, as we have come to realize through time, even as far as the evolution of our everyday products, such as the cell phone. The cell phone used to be just a big block that you plugged into your car, maybe, or you had a big block device that you would use, and now, like when we were kids, we were told we're like as math students in high school or throughout grade school, we were taught to utilize our brain to calculate and solve a problem, but now we have at our disposal a calculator, which we were told that we weren't going to
Do you think that makes
have.
us lazier though?
I don't think it makes us lazier. I think it makes us more efficient in a lot of ways. But I can tell you that I can't do division now that I could do when I was when I was in the 5th grade.
I don't have any more any other phone numbers memorized.
Joe, what do you? I'm sorry, that was rude. I don't know how to do division anymore.
I'm just
That was
like,
really brilliant.
You know, it's a bit of a balance though, because the one thing.
I want to before I want to hear you, but I want to get to Joe real quick before we get to anybody else. What do you think about the exosuit?
I love it, but like I was saying, like it's a skeleton to me. So like it's just the first draft. There's a million ways you could take it. A lot of them in my mind are bad, but I just have the conspiracy mind that keeps thinking of a guy making the Iron Man suit, and like 90% of the people that do that aren't going to become Iron Man.
That's been a lot of the comments that I've seen online that are just like, "Where's my Iron Man suit?" What were you saying, Sean? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Is like, we think like it's gonna take away from humankind because it's gonna make us weaker. Now we're gonna have these exosuits, and now we're not gonna do as much because we're not lifting as much and all these other things, and we're gonna become duller. But I also look at it as the people that are becoming duller. There was somebody that invented it that it's really smart.
What do you mean by that?
So with the people that were making more dull, there's also people exceeding in technology and education and all these other things. So technically we're succeeding in one department.
We're getting dumber,
Yeah.
but we're getting smarter.
it's always an exchange
it's
for
a
one
balance
thing
of
or
like,
the other.
that work harder, not work smarter, not harder type of deal. But
There were like large groups of people when like novels first started becoming really popular that were saying that novels were going to give us they would make us dumber.
There was actually
and,
a
like,
couple
rot our
news
brain
reports that
and-
were saying
yeah.
that the invention of typewriters was actually going to ruin students because there's some quote something like students nowadays can't learn how to write on chalkboards, and that's going to ruin society for
Yeah.
everybody. They don't know how to wipe a chalkboard down.
So
Our
essentially,
superpower is to adapt.
Essentially, like what is known throughout history, throughout the existence of human beings, is our ability to adapt and evolve, and eventually, regardless of our debate about it here,
Yeah.
it's going to happen, whether we like it or not. And we're going to evolve and get used to it.
Yeah,
And
and despite my
speed of it
unadulterated
is what scares me.
Yeah, despite my unadulterated enthusiasm about biotechnology and the integration of humans into technology, I do want to say now at this point that I do have my reservations in the fact that there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of things that can fuck up, and there's plenty of reasons why we should be apprehensive. But I don't think that should stop us from trying to pursue any of this kind of technology.
yes,
And I think that the pursuit of this technology is actually going to lighten human effort, which again is the entire reason for technology. We created the plow because we didn't want to go out in the field with a hoe, and when we created the plow, what we realized we could do was we could actually hoe 5 times, 6 times as much as we could with one human being that we can now with this new technology. And so again, I think technology is just the extension of human ability, and I don't see any of these as inherently bad things. I can see, Joe, your personal apprehension, but I could see where other people are also apprehensive about it because there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and honestly, we're gonna have accidents. There's gonna be fucking factories that, we have these exoskeletons that fail, and somehow it's a detrimental thing where we've got people suing and stuff like that. That's gonna happen, I predict. But what we can do is try to prevent that from happening by creating better technology.
I also think it's we're on this path. It's irreversible now. Like we cannot we are. Like, if you look at how fast technology has grown in the last just 10 years, it's incredible. And like in the next another 10 years, we won't even be able to imagine the type of stuff that's going to be around.
Yeah.
Like it's
I mean, we already talked about
quick.
the transcendental communication. Like, what happens when you can be able to send, or like you can take your phone and send a Bluetooth fucking picture through that?
well, and
Well, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Sean, but we do have another thing to get to before we can just free range this whole thing.
Yep.
So the Guardian XO is the older brother, or the bigger brother to the HAL, which is the physical therapy device, right? And it's an exosuit that's designed for physical therapy.
Is
so
that just like braces?
Yeah, it's basically that, but it's powered by a bunch of servos and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So the Guardian XO, created by the what is it, Sarcos company, is the big brother to the HAL. Now, the Guardian
Big brother is a
XO
very scary term.
has
the
a
way you do
bigger
it.
brother.
See,
Oh,
that just
yeah.
reminds me of Big Brother watching. Every time you say it, I'm just like, yeah, it's the government. And they have a bigger brother over there that's even scarier than all of these, but they're not going to show it to you. Like,
All right, so I'm going to describe for you guys the Guardian GT, which is made by the Sarcos company. The Guardian GT is similar to the XO in that you put on an exosuit which senses and responds to the user. But instead of moving the exosuit by itself, you actually move the corresponding unit. And so consider it like this. You're attached to an exosuit, but it's wired to a machine that's on tank treads, right?
Okay, yeah.
Now, this machine is called the Guardian GT, and the GT is best described as two huge fucking arms on front of a small tank track, which is attached by cables to the operating station, being the exosuit. It's like the exosuit, but without the legs. The arms have the capacity to lift 1,000 pounds altogether. It's a very dexterous machine. It amplifies reach and strength. Now, I want you guys to picture this. You're looking directly ahead at a tank, right? And this tiny little tank, it's 3 feet by maybe 4 feet. It's the size of a pallet. But when the guy in the exosuit reaches his arms out to say, yay! Or to make a Y in the YMCA thing, 7 foot fucking arms extend out of this goddamn machine. Right? So that's terrifying. Each arm
many
is fucking
fingers does it
7
have?
feet. It's designed to keep human out of harm's way. It has a center tower with 2 cameras attached that can rotate and look at different directions. The idea of placing it where the cameras are placed is to, well, let me read this. It's placed on the GT at such height that it mimics where your head would be if your arms had these 7 foot, or if your head had
Wow.
these 7 foot arms.
Wow.
So how do you
You can watch
Right.
a video of a guy cutting a piece of metal with a saw, grabbing the piece that was already cut and cutting the other end of it so the piece of metal doesn't fall off the thing. And then he proceeds to take the saw and put it into a holder, and then take the piece of metal and put it into into essentially a garbage can. And then he grabs the garbage can and empties it into a dumpster. Now, this is literally you controlling essentially an avatar. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
7 foot arms, and it is terrifying looking. What do you guys think of this goddamn new technology? Because if the exosuit was terrifying, I imagine this is going to creep you guys the fuck out.
Oh man, I'm just thinking about like immediately my mind goes into like the bot battles that they have.
Battle bots?
Battle bots!
Yeah. and fuck yeah, that's like a whole entertainment within of itself. As far as the actual like realistic logistic properties of it, my mind goes to archaeological advancements that could be
Yeah.
made. Holy crap.
Yeah. Well, and each arm can lift 500 pounds, so you
Like
can
the
do construction, archaeology.
the type of
search and
buildings
rescue.
and bridges, and yeah, the search and rescue, the as far as building any kind of rehabilitation center of any kind, of like preserving whatever.
Spit it out.
I can't. Yeah, I'm excited. You got me fucking.
Oh yeah, I'm
pumped.
fucking amped about this. And I hope you guys really are too. We're actually about to close out the show, so I do want to ask. We'll start with you, Sean. What do you think about the Guardian GT? These 7 foot arms.
I mean, it sounds fun. I can't argue. If you
Yeah.
presented the opportunity for me to jump in the suit and go for it and tool around for a while, I'm gonna check it out.
And it's the same fluid technology as the XO, where you've got the trigger and it freezes things and puts things
Yeah,
in
that's
place.
what I'm like. I can't argue. It sounds. I don't want to ever argue. There's like a bunch of where will it go? Where will it
It's
take
gonna go
society? And we
wrong.
can like really venture off on that for a while. But To be honest, in any technology, even with the bionic eye, the exosuit, any of those things, I very much admire the venture in new technology and seeing what the possibility is that we can do with what we know.
Yeah.
Because if you ever hold that back,
Yeah.
I mean, fuck
We-
you.
If
Like,
we don't learn
We-
how to enhance human ability,
If-
then we're kind
if
of
you have a
limiting
question,
ourselves.
if something is possible, you should see if it's possible.
Well,
Definitely.
Regardless
well,
of whether or not it's useless or not and stuff, it's not about that. It's about discovering what is possible.
And if
that-
if it is useful, like by creating these things, maybe we'll never utilize them, but at least we've created them and we've been like, all right,
yes.
this is useless.
and we're not living in fear of what we don't know.
Exactly.
Well, and learning and technology is always something that, like, the more you learn, one thing, we may make an exoskeleton that in the history of the being of mankind, maybe like, hey, remember that time that we made suits and
Yeah.
stuff? That was dumb.
that was dumb.
But it may
Why
lead,
didn't we just work out?
it may lead to a better technology that we learn later that's where it's like, oh, we'll implement that technology for something that is very
Yeah.
useful, and we can't think what that or fathom what that might be. The production of technology and learning and productivity and making things we never fathom is always something great, I think.
Yeah, because like maybe my dreams of wearing an exosuit with a 3-piece suit will be dashed constantly because maybe exoskeletons are literally only going to be useful for work in constructive factories. But the idea is that we've gone through this process and we've learned that it's only actually utilized here, and we can only put a bulldozer in so many spots before it starts to sink into the soil.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad you guys are very hopeful because I'm not. I'm happy you brought up bulldozers because that definitely brings up my last point. Have you guys ever heard of the killdozer?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what that reminds me of. Like, this was just a guy who, like, one little thing went wrong in his, a couple bad things happened in
No,
his
like
life.
really bad things would happen.
Well,
Like,
but
went
he
bad with
did.
him.
He had one decision, one little decision
Oh, yeah,
that
there's
he
definitely that
decided to make
snapping moment.
the killdozer. He like loaded this bulldozer up with steel and drove it all through his town. Destroyed millions of dollars worth of stuff.
He destroyed something like 85% of that town,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So if that's what somebody could just do with just our technology laying around, like imagine what we're going to be able to start doing when we start giving each other like fun little toys like that.
Oh, yeah, it's- honestly, I've got.
I love anarchy, so I'm okay with it, but I'm just not hopeful that it's going to be fun.
Well, and you know, I imagine the governments and the people who are in charge of everything are going to limit the amount of like.
And those are the people
exosuits that
you
we
want
can
to have them.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be like only military people can have this navigational extrasensory beacon on their chest, and only military people can have this fucking exosuit that allows them to punch through literally a foot of brick wall. You know, like.
And then we're just going to be like
LS
magnets all over them.
LSD was legal for a while before they realized the power of it. So
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's gonna be cool for a bit until we figure it out. So enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah,
You know, that's
and
all.
so before we get to the end of this podcast, I do want to ask you guys individually. We'll start with Joe. Do you have anything that you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I do want to say that I very much enjoy this new format we're doing. I really very excited to see what other topics we dive deep into. Like I'm very excited to go a little bit more than scratching the surface, and we'll see what we can pull out.
Definitely, yeah. Miss Casey, do you have any thoughts?
Question everything and do your own research.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Because honestly, I spent 16 hours doing research for this episode, so I hope it pays off. What, Sean, anything else before we close out? All right. Well, I want to thank you guys, Joe, Casey, and Sean. Sean, you're here at Fourth Corner for hosting us, but you guys for being here, Sean and Casey, or rather Joe and Casey.
Howdy.
And thank you guys, the listeners, for being here with us. Let me know what you guys think about our new format and how we're doing things. It's going to be on YouTube because I'm poor for the next little while. So eventually we're going to move over to Spotify, but it's going to be a little bit of a time. Next week, we're going to have Sam Mitt back, and we're also going to be talking about robotics, which is not quite the same as cybernetics and human augmentation, but we're definitely going to get over that. If you guys haven't heard of Boston Dynamics, definitely look into it because we're fucking getting there.
I do think Sam's a robot, but that's something we'll talk about.
We'll talk about that next week. Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank you guys, the listeners, for listening to us. And I want to thank you guys here in the studio for being with me. And I hope you guys enjoyed anything. Please leave a comment, a like, a share, anything like that, and let us know how we're doing. Thank you.
Fuck Hobo Johnson.
Fuck Hobo Johnson.